Good afternoon, Sage X3 partner community. So, in today's session, what we're going to be going through is really an overview warehousing demo. So, this is a demo that I'll do to really the vast majority of prospects that I demonstrate to. And this is meant to be an overview of the capabilities that come out of the box from a warehousing perspective. We'll get into a little bit of the advanced warehousing capabilities. We'll touch on barcode scanning to a degree as well. Now, there's going to be another session as part of the SalesHood learning curriculum that is specifically dedicated to ADC. So we'll do a deep dive on that in another session. This is really going to focus on the overview of the warehouse, the capabilities, the warehouses, the site setup, that sort of thing, as opposed to a deep transactional review. Now, there are a couple of supplementary documents that I've got associated with this module. One is going to be the demo setup and script. So please take a look at that. It'll give you really an idea of what I have staged ahead of time, the items, the customers, the sites that I'm using. It also is a breakdown of a bulleted script or outline that I utilize in most of these types of demos to kind of provide just a little bit of structure. The secondary document is going to be a barcode scanning document that I've got set up that I'll utilize anytime I do any type of scanning within X3. Now, what it is it's just an Excel file. It utilizes a sort of a barcode conversion equation that will just take whatever you key in to the first column and it'll convert that over to a barcode in the second column. So it makes it real easy if you need to copy and paste transaction numbers, item numbers, location numbers into the document so you can do your scans based off of that, as opposed to having to actually print the barcoded documentation that is available within the reports in X3. Now, I'm going to be utilizing the Sage X3 demonstration environment. So if you're not a part of that program, please take a look at the module in SalesHood that is specific to that. It'll show you how to actually become part of that program, how to download and utilize the demonstration environment. So with all of that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Now, I'm going to be presenting this really from the perspective of demoing to a food and beverage customer. So I'm going to utilize the Bean Dip product. I'm going to utilize the food and beverage site, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into the demo. All right, so thanks everyone for joining this session. We're going to give an overview of the warehousing capabilities within X3. One of the core things that I always like to mention up front in these demonstrations is that this is out of the box capability with X3. This is not integration to another module or another product. These capabilities are out of the box, available to you. You can use them as needed. Now, just a quick reminder, as I'm sure you've heard in your other demo sessions, X3 is a multi-everything application. Now, how that pertains to our warehousing environment is that we can have multiple companies, multiple sites, multiple warehouses within those sites, and multiple locations and location types with each warehouse. So there's a lot of different reasons that you may use these kind of unique combinations in hierarchy, right? So your site, starting at that level, your site can function as a warehouse. It can function as a manufacturing plant, a distribution facility, a financial only site. We to designate warehouses specifically, you can set up multiple warehouses tied into a singular site. Now, these warehouses can be logical warehouses or they can be physical warehouses. So if you actually have those buildings on your premises, those can be identified as their own warehouses. Or if you've got a singular storage facility that you want to have separated out logically for whatever reason, you can designate unique warehouses within a physical warehouse. Now, associated with each of those warehouses or sites, you can have multiple location types and in turn, multiple locations. So that's kind of the hierarchy. I always like to review that quickly before diving into the session, just so you really have an understanding of how kind of complex simplistic the setup can be. It's really just unique to each prospect. Now, what you're seeing on the screen right now is a visual process map that I like to utilize for these demonstrations. This is a warehouse process map that we've got set up in our environment, and it's used to sort of visualize what a warehouse could look like and how the different warehousing transactions can come into play here. So it kind of helps to just show the entire picture, so we're not just moving through transaction after transaction. So this is the visual process we're going to spend most of our time in today, and then we'll get into some of the specific transactions a little bit later on. Now, right now, this is a blank screen. We're going to go ahead and get our warehouse set up. So this is just a pretty standard warehouse layout that we've got established within the demonstration environment. So what it really illustrates is we've got some aisle, rack, bin storage, we've got some tank storage, and we've got unique location types and locations established here as well. Now, however you need your warehouse to be set up in the system, we can map to that. So just keep that in mind, that however the warehouse is currently established, or if you want to do some kind of warehouse reorganization, we can mimic that within Sage X3. Now, the first thing that we'll need to do, so we're going to utilize, in this case, a single site, a single warehouse, and we're going to have multiple location types set up. So location types is really where we're going to establish a lot of the core characteristics around how our inventory is going to function and move through these different areas. So if we drive into our location types here, what I'm going to do is filter on the left side of the screen here for our single site that we're going to be utilizing. And you saw over there that, again, we can have these location types set up for multiple sites for multiple warehouses, but we're going to focus in on NA021 for today. And then what you can see on the left-hand side is there's multiple types of locations that we've got that are associated with this particular site. So we've got some bulk storage locations, some quality control locations, some tank, some default storage locations, shop floor or staging locations, and these can be whatever you need them to be. So whatever your warehouse locations need to be, those can be set in the system. Now, if we take a look quickly at our storage location, this is the one that we'll use to kind of walk through the different characteristics that can be established here. Now, starting at the header section, what we can see is our site or our warehouse that this location type is tied to. So NA021, again, is what we're going to be using for today's purposes. We can see our location type abbreviation, so there's STO for our storage locations. We've got our description set to short storage and short description as well. Now, when we get down into the characteristics here, this is really kind of the meat and potatoes of the location setup, right? This is how we're defining how we're going to function within this type of location. And there's a lot of key things here that can be unique to each location type. Now, starting with the characteristics, then the location category, we can see that this is set as an internal storage location. That's just kind of our standard internal storage. We've got dock locations. What this will trigger is this will trigger our directed put away transactions or our cross docking transactions. We've got a customer location. So if we've got things stored externally or we've got customers that are storing inventory at our facility, we can designate that specifically. We've got subcontract locations. So these subcontract locations can be set as external locations as well. So if at any part of our manufacturing process, we're sending things out to have some subcontract work done on them, we can track our inventory at those locations very easily. Next, we can see the series of checkboxes here. Now we can select one, all, or none of these, or any combination thereof. And what these do is these are going to determine, again, how things are able to move in and out of this particular location. So first, we see single product. What that means is that you can have a single item stored here. If you try to place a different product in that location, it's not going to allow it. If you relieve all of the inventory of that first product, you can then place a second item into that location. Dedicated. So dedicated locations, these are used to house a singular product. That's all that can be stored there. These are frequently used for tank storage, right? So if there's things that you're having pumped off of trucks into your tanks, you don't want to go through the cleaning procedures to have something else stored there. You're going to have dedicated tanks for specific items. Replenish locations. So these are locations where you set a threshold and they're automatically replenished when we go below that threshold. So these are typically set as, maybe packing lines, right, where we've got our packaging materials stored in bulk in the back somewhere. We bring them up to the packing lines when needed. These could also be, pick locations, right? So we've got bulk storage areas. We've got a small parcel pick location. When that pick area depletes, when it moves below that threshold, we can trigger a transfer transaction to move it from the bulk storage up to that pick location. And then finally, you've got capacity managed. So this is a way to set specific capacities for the warehouse locations. Now, the capacity that we're measuring against can be whatever you need it to be. It might be weight, it might be volume, it might be number of units, it might be a combination of these things. And the way that we do that is we just set in the unit of measure section here, the unit that we're referencing and the maximum capacity. It's as simple as that. And then finally, you've got your authorized substatuses. So there are three main status groups within Sage X3. We've got A, Q, and R. These essentially are how we allow or disallow different things to happen with a product that falls into that status. So A is going to be, usually available inventory, right? These are things we can sell, that we can use from a manufacturing perspective, that we can pick, that we can ship out. Q, this is typically quality or quarantine. So if we've got items that go on a quality hold for whatever reason, they'll take on this status. They're not going to show as available inventory. R is typically rejected or returned. So if someone's returning product to us, we want to house that in a unique return location until we can kind of take a look at it. We can set that as an R status. And again, it's not going to show as available inventory. These statuses can be adopted by our location types. So if we want to have unique quality control locations that will only house products that are in that Q status, we can set that as an option here. All right, so once we've got all of our location types established, all we need to do is create the locations associated with those types. So there's a location creation transaction that'll just run through, create as many locations as you need associated with that particular location type. Now, taking a look back here into our warehousing visual process map, we'll start to move through the options on the right side of the screen here just to kind of tell a little bit about the additional capabilities that are available from a WMS perspective within X3. So we go ahead and drop down location replenishment. Again, we mentioned this a little bit when we just went through the location type setup. So we can establish those replenish locations. We can certainly handle any of your cycle counting activities that need to occur. Obviously, shipping and receiving transactions are here as well. Automated data collection, what that refers to is barcode scanning capabilities. So anything that you may need to do from a warehouse or from a manufacturing perspective for that matter can be accommodated via barcode scanning. We'll see a little bit on that later on. We'll actually perform a barcoded receipt as well as a barcoded pick, okay? License plate management. So this is another core capability of X3 as well. We're able to handle LPNs. So LPNs or pallet tags, some folks refer to it a little bit differently, but if we want to, let's say we receive in a number of boxes of raw materials, when we receive them in, we want to palletize them. We want to tag that pallet with a specific ID so we can move that pallet around our warehouse as a unit as opposed to individual boxes is a reason that you might want to use. So that's available out of the box here as well. And then we have some advanced warehousing capabilities that I want to briefly step through here. So if we drop this down, you can see that we've got zone assignment, pick sequencing, velocity assignment, and directed picking and put away. Now from zone assignment here, if we open this option up, we can assign specific pick zones to our different locations within the warehouse. So if we want to utilize directed picking functionality, it's going to direct folks to the zone that they're assigned to pick whatever is required out of that zone. Pick sequencing, associated with that, we want to have folks work through the warehouse in a logical manner, right? So we want to sequence the picks in a manner where we're moving through to locations that are near each other as opposed to moving from one end of the warehouse to another back to the middle. That really decreases our picking efficiency. So if we can provide a sequencing of how we want folks to move through the warehouse, then X3 will adopt that and it's going to direct our pickers as necessary. We can also set velocity assignment. Now, this is really more of a reporting field in X3, but it can be captured at the location level. So if we've got locations that we house products that typically have pretty quick turns, we can set those as high moving velocity areas. Those are usually going to be more toward the front of the warehouse, closer to our docks. If we've got slower moving products that don't turn as quickly, we can designate those areas as slow moving areas, and those are typically going to be positioned more toward the back of the warehouse. And then finally, we've got directed picking and directed put away processes that are available within X3 here. So from a directed picking standpoint, again, this is all tied into that zone assignment and the picks that we're doling out. So as someone is receiving those picks into their handheld scanning device, they're going to just be directed to move through and pick those products that are needed, take them to a staging area, pack and ship them from there. Then from a directed put away perspective, as we receive things into our dock locations, it's then going to trigger a put away transaction to say, take this product from the dock location and put it away into this inventory location, this default location, or this dedicated product location. So that can all be automated as well. Okay, so now that we've kind of got a sort of general overview of the warehousing capabilities in X3, again, all out of the box here, I want to just step through a couple of key transactions of interest, just to give you a little bit of a view of how these transactions are processed, and then how we're going to go ahead and manage those from a barcode scanning perspective. Now, the first area that I want to jump into is going to be our product site record. Now, you're probably familiar with this. The product site record is where we set all of the uniquenesses for an item that's associated with a specific site. So if we go ahead and jump into our distribution visual process map here, we'll dive directly into our products. Now, from a finished good perspective, so from an item that we are going to pick and ship out, we're going to utilize this FIN 301 jalapeno bean dip product, okay? If we take a look at the product site here, and we scroll down a bit to our default locations, we can see that we can have unique locations that default in based on the business process that we're working, right? So from a receive, we're going to put it away in stock in this location. We're going to pick to this location. Now, these are all set as the same location. That's really just for ease of demo purposes, but these can all be a unique location that's tied into a certain process, or they can be a group of locations that we want to associate here. So this is where you can establish those default locations for different parts of the process. Now, to close this out quickly, I want to just take a look at the product that we're going to be using from a receiving standpoint. So this bean dip item is the one that we'll be picking and shipping out. We're going to be using RAW345 to actually receive in. So we can just see it's a bread label that we're going to be receiving in. We take a look at the product site. You've got the same thing here, our default locations, but we've got a different location associated with this particular item in this particular process. Okay. So first, we're going to handle that product receipt. Now, before we receive an item, we've got to have a PO out there for it that we're going to be referencing, right? So you've probably seen a lot of the purchasing capabilities of X3 at this point. So what we're going to do is just quickly jump into the purchase order screen. So I'm going to switch over to a little bit of a different process map that really shows the entire distribution process. So sales order comes in, we do our planning, purchasing, purchase order creation, receipt, shipment out to our customer, okay? Now I've got a PO already staged just to make the process a little bit more efficient here. So we can see this PO 127, that's the one that we're going to reference for our purposes. We can see all of the purchase order information, the vendor that it's from, all of the management, transport, currency data, all of the payment terms, the analytical accounting capabilities that we've got here. If we scroll down to the lines, we can see this is just a single line PO for RAW345. If we scroll over a bit, we can see the receiving site. We can see quantities, 60,000 of these from this particular vendor. We can see the unit of measure. If we scroll over a bit more, we can see a lot of the core financial information as well. Okay, so that is what we're actually going to be receiving in. So we've got this purchase order out to our vendor, and we're going to then receive against this PO to pull this product into our inventory. Now, the next thing about X3, and this is where I'm going to get into a little bit of the barcode scanning transactions. The nice thing about X3 is that if we have vendors that aren't necessarily barcoding everything, we can generate what's called a receiving worksheet. Now, what a receiving worksheet is it's going to have all of the required barcodes for us to perform a receipt. So that's something that can be automatically printed via workflow as we're getting ready to receive these products on any given day. Okay, so we can generate receiving worksheets if needed. If our vendors are providing barcoded documentation, all the better. We're simply scanning off of that. Now, what I've got up here is I've got a view of one of our ADC screens, right? So one of our barcode scanning screens. Now, this is a browser-based view of the screen. There's a couple of different ways that we could view these transactions depending on what your preference is. I like to use the kind of more modern looking uh, web-based screens here. These can be displayed on any device that can operate a browser. So if we've got, iPhones, Android devices that we want folks to use from a scanning perspective, we can display on there, and we can utilize a tethered Bluetooth scanner, a scanning case. If we've got a workstation out at the receiving docks that's just got a USB scanner attached, we can utilize that as well. Point being, any device that can operate a browser can operate these screens. The other option that we have is we can utilize a Telnet session. So if you want to use the more kind of rugged handheld scanning devices with the character-based screen, then we've got that option as well. It's really just a preference thing, and they're licensed slightly differently. Now, keep in mind that over the course of the next year, Sage will be rolling out new barcode scanning functionality. It is cloud optimized, and the security associated with it is allowing it to operate in the cloud as well. Okay, so we will see a little bit of a different interface, and we will see some updates and new transactions added to the ADC functionality over the course of the next year. But let's take a look at in this case, our purchase receipt scanning transaction. So what you can see here is right off the bat, it knows information that's associated with my particular user. It knows that I'm operating in this NA021 site. All I have to do here is go ahead and scan my PO number. Now, just for reference, I'm going to be scanning off of this barcode document here. But again, if you've got your vendor providing this data to you, or you need to generate that receiving worksheet, you can operate in that manner as well. So all we're going to do here is go ahead and scan the PO. So you'll hear my device click in the back. Now I want to show here just briefly, I did a quick miss scan because what this illustrates is that if you're not scanning the appropriate thing, the system knows that. The system knows what to expect. It's not going to allow folks to just enter erroneous data in here, okay? So we can go ahead and remove the miss scan and go ahead and scan the appropriate barcode. Oh, my mistake, I miss scanned there again. So we'll go ahead and remove that and scan in the appropriate code. Okay, so we can see the PO number that we're scanning in. When we tab off of that field, it's going to enter some data for us. It's going to enter the vendor, and then it's just going to require us to scan the item. Now, we've seen a couple of different scans, so I want to show you a little bit of a different way that we can make selections here. So if I've got my iPhone, maybe a barcode is a little bit messed up on the packaging that the vendor sent to us, and I need to just make a selection here. That's what the magnifying glass icons are for. So based on the data that's already entered in the system for the PO, it knows the product we're expecting to receive. And if you recall, there was just the singular item on that purchase order. So if I make a selection, we can see that we can then select the item that we're scanning in. It's going to pull in the unit of measure, the quantity that if we need to adjust up or down at this point, we can. I'm going to leave it as is, but it's going to pull in the quantity. If there's any license plate information that we associate with it at this point, we can do that as well. We can see the inventory status that this is coming in as. So this is coming in as an A status, right? It's available inventory. We can see that it's defaulting in the default location that this is going to be put away in. If we need to capture any lot information or expiration date information, we can capture that here as well. So we've got all of the data entered, and you saw I just took 2 quick scans there. We've got all of the data entered that's required. We can tap on OK. We've done our three-way match successfully, or in this case, just our two-way match back to the PO. And we can go ahead and create that receipt. Now, this is just a quick informational message to say, hey, you've generated this receipt. Here's the receipt number. And if we go ahead and take a look back into X3, into our receiving function, we can go ahead and dive into our receipt transaction. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to filter this on today's receipts so we can take a look at what just came in. And there in real time, we can see that we've received in this RAW345. So with two quick scans, we've pulled that into the system. It's available inventory. We've got it in that inventory location. So if we need to utilize this particular bag label as part of our manufacturing process, we can then issue this out to work orders at this point if needed. Okay, so really quickly there, that was just one of our ADC transactions. We've received the product in, it's available to us, we can utilize it as needed. Now, the other ADC transaction that I did want to show is going to be on the picking side of things, right? Now, there's two different ways that we can pick within Sage X3. We can do our directed picking, which is where we're going to have those picks automatically pushed to a device based on the pick zone that that user is assigned to. We can also do what's called a sales pick, which is just going to allow us to reference a shipment ID to pick for that shipment, stage it, and ship it out. I'm going to be doing a sales pick in a later session. A deep dive into ADC functionality will get into some of the directed picking capabilities. I'm just going to do a quick sales pick here. Now, just to, again, show you sort of the entire chain, I've got a sales order entered in the system. We'll go ahead and take a look. It's out to this customer, NA006. If we scroll down, we can see the sales order lines that are on this particular order. So we've just got one item. We've got FIN 301, which is our jalapeno bean dip product. We can see that they've ordered 100 cases of this particular. Also got the delivery transaction generated at this point as well. That's what we're going to reference from a picking standpoint. So if we go quickly into our pick, pack, and ship, take a look at our delivery, we can see that this is the delivery transaction that's associated with that particular order, and this is what we will be picking against. Okay. So let's go ahead and minimize this screen. We'll jump back into our sales screen. Now let's place our sales in the position of one of our warehouse folks who's going to be performing this pick. So we've got the documentation available to us. We've got the inquiries that shows us here's the shipments that we need to pick. Now, again, you can see that we can always drop this down. We can do a search. We can make a shipment selection from this line as well, or from the magnifying glass. We can also just perform our scans. So it's really just up to you what's going to be most efficient for the process. But given that we're showing the scanning screens, we're going to go ahead and scan this shipment number. So bear with me for just a second. We went ahead and scanned the shipment. Now it's pulling in a lot of data for us here that the pickers are going to need, right? It's telling us the quantity. We're going to pick 100 cases. We're going to pick this lot number. Now this is exceedingly important in any of the kind of core industries that we're going to be focused in, including food and beverage, right? We want to ensure that we're picking the appropriate lot number that's got the appropriate expiration date. There's quality control that's associated with it that's all passed. So it's going to direct us to the lot number that we need to pick. It's going to direct us to the location we're picking from, which is STO01. We're going to be taking it to REC01. So this is to our staging area. Okay. Now, what it's going to ask us to do is perform a couple of validations to ensure that we're picking the appropriate thing. So the first validation that's going to occur is go ahead to STO01 and scan that location. So we'll go ahead and scan the location. Now, again, I did a misscan here. It's telling me this is an invalid location. So again, it's not going to allow our folks to make mistakes. We want more accurate picks. And we'll go ahead and just scan in STO01. Okay. It's valid, we're good to go. Now a secondary validation is going to occur where we need to scan in the product. So we'll go ahead and scan that item in, FIN 301. We need to validate a third time the quantity that we're picking. So we're going to go ahead and pick 100 of that product, 100 cases. And then the fourth validation is going to be the lot number right here. Okay, so we need to ensure that we're picking the appropriate lot number. So we'll scan that in here as well. Okay, so all of the validations have occurred. We've gone through the transaction. We saw what happened if we did have a error or a misvalidation here. So we've performed this pick. We've got the pick. We've taken it to the staging area. We'll go ahead and click OK. Fantastic, my pick is complete. Now, what that does in the system is that's going to mark this as deliverable, basically saying that we've got this pick, the pick has been completed, it's been staged. So we can either go ahead and perform our packing transaction now, or we can go ahead and load it on the truck and get it shipped out, validate that delivery, and ensure that it's on the way to the customer. Okay. All right. In conclusion, I just wanted to show a couple of other kind of core screens that we do have available here from a warehousing perspective that I like to point out that are unique to specific warehousing processes. So number one, our receiving workbench. What a lot of our customers like to do is if they want to put large monitors out on the docks in the receiving or the shipping areas that are going to show, here are the orders that we're expecting to receive today. It gives that kind of little added visual that folks may need to perform their jobs a little bit more efficiently. So we can see all of the receipts, the dates that we're expecting them, and we can see what we actually have to process for any given day. If we need to set any receiving appointments where we want folks directed to a particular dock, a particular time, we can set those. They will be displayed on a calendar as well. Conversely, from a shipping perspective, we can see if we've got any scheduled or unscheduled deliveries, things that are going out on any given day. And then if there is any cross docking that needs to occur, we've got a cross dock workbench as well that will show us if we've got any candidates for cross docking, which basically says that we've received things into a dock location. We've got an order that requires some of that product that we've received in, so we can pick directly from the dock onto the truck, get it out the door. So just a few other nice workbenches that are built into X3 here that tie into our warehousing transactions. Now, with that being said, I want to thank you for your time today. Hopefully, this was helpful from a warehouse overview perspective. Do not hesitate. If there are any questions about this session, feel free to reach out, and I am happy to answer anything that I possibly can. Please take a look at the associated documents within this module. And again, I thank you very much for your time.